Hi everyone, my name is Susheela and Jess and Jason asked me to read a book with them for Hello Hemlock last month. The novel that I chose is The Golden Mean by Annabel Lyon. So, The Golden Mean is a work of historical fiction. Annabel Lyon has taken real events that occurred about 2,000 years ago and has imagined all of the details around those events, conversations, interactions between characters. The story follows Aristotle, the philosopher, and Alexander the Great. It covers 7 years of Aristotle's life when he was tutoring Alexander the Great. The novel is written in the first person. It's written in Aristotle's voice, which, as somebody who is not that familiar or at all familiar with ancient Greek history, I found it really lent itself to making the work less intimidating to read and to making it much more accessible and easy to relate to. So yeah, I chose The Golden Mean because back when it was published in 2009, there's all kinds of hype around this book. It was Annabel Lyon's debut novel, and it was nominated for the Giller and the Governor General's Award, and it won the Rogers Writers Trust Fiction Prize. So I'm not usually one to be swayed by awards and hype, but I remember thinking that the idea for the novel was really interesting. So let's talk about how Lyon has imagined Aristotle to be as a person. Because obviously we only know so much about these historical figures. So she's given him some distinct characteristics. The main one is that she has imagined him as somebody with this sickness. He calls it this sickness. What we would probably know it as is depression or maybe bipolar disorder. He doesn't deal very well with extremes and he reacts in the extreme. Sometimes he'll find himself sobbing and he won't know why or when he started. We'll see the idea of extremes come up in this novel again and again. The novel is called The Golden Mean. The Golden Mean is taken from Aristotle's writings, and it's the balance that you find between two extremes. So as an example, in the novel, Aristotle is tutoring Alexander, and in the scene he asks Alexander to name a virtue. So the virtue that he names is courage. So that would be the golden mean. And then the two extremes of that, though, would be if there was a lack of courage, that would be cowardice, and if there was an excess of courage, that would be rashness. We see this idea of the golden mean come up in different ways throughout the novel. So first of all, as I said, Aristotle himself has trouble with extremes and finding that balance. There's also the idea that he is trying to tutor Alexander, who's going to become this military leader and become this force in the world. The pressure at the time from Alexander's father, Philip, is that his son become his heir and a good soldier. And on the other hand, Aristotle is trying to get him to think with his head and to expand his intellect. Can I clear up one thing quickly before you go? My lessons are to make you think in ways others don't, to make your world bigger, not this world. I wave a hand to take in the stables, the palace, Pella, Macedon, but the world in here, I tap my temple. I also quickly wanted to talk about how Annabel Lyon uses the imagery of the ocean to get across Aristotle's character and what he's going through. He's a strange boy, I overheard my father tell my mother on one of his increasingly rare visits home. He worries me, not his health, but his mind. I don't know if he has too much discipline or not at all. He goes places I can't follow, inside himself. And then we have his sister talking about what his mother said about him. After a minute, Aramneste said, barely above a whisper, Mother used to say he had the ocean inside him, but that it was his great secret and I must never tell anyone. She said if he wanted to talk about it, he would, but we must never push him. We have to let him go about things in his own way. Hearing Aristotle's parents talk about him, and they're using this imagery of the ocean and depths deep inside of him, this place that he goes to, we can start to understand what happens to him when he gets into these moods or when he has kind of symptoms of the sickness that he talks about. So there's one final passage I want to share with you. It occurs after Philip, Alexander's father, has died, and Aristotle is trying to comfort Alexander and give him some advice about what he should do about the grieving process. And so we have Aristotle talking here to Alexander. My father died of plague. I take my arm from his shoulders. Your father was killed by an assassin. The body needs a balance of fluids. Grief creates an excess, which we release through tears. Too many tears and the body becomes parched. The brain shrivels. You need to grieve and drink water and sleep. In the morning you'll ask the gods to turn the guilt you feel into a tiny fish. You'll hide that fish somewhere inside yourself. I touch my temple, my heart. Here or here. You can live like that. No one will know. I really love that passage because I think, it harkens back to the passage where his mother talks about Alexander having an ocean inside of himself. And to him telling Alexander that he wants to expand his world, the world in here. Aristotle, being the great philosopher that he was, has expanded his own world in here, but he may have in part been doing that through his own grief. I guess you could ask yourself, how many tiny fish has he hidden in that ocean inside of himself? Yeah, I just really love that passage. One last thing I want to mention, and maybe Jess or Jason will go into this more, I don't know. There's just so many things I think you could go into with this. But there's a lot of discussion here, as we were talking about extremes and dualities, there's a lot of discussion in here about tragedy and comedy. I just wanted to point out that the novel is laid out like a Greek play. It has a cast of characters at the very beginning, and it's also split into 4 acts, which I found kind of interesting and maybe a little clever. So to finish, seeing as this is a Camlet channel, beyond Annabel Lyon being a Canadian author, so she was born in Brampton but then has spent most of her life in British Columbia, I don't know where I see Canada in here beyond the fact that Aristotle and Alexander the Great have affected all of our lives. I don't know. I'll be interested to hear what Jason and Jess have to say, or if you read the book, if you see Canada in here in some specific way. If you read the book, let's talk about it below, and if not, stay tuned for Jess and Jason because they will have very insightful videos, I do not doubt. Thanks guys, bye!